concept I'd like to introduce is creative destruction. There was a economist, probably about 50 years ago, came up with this notion of creative destruction. His name is Joseph Schumpeter. There's a great biography out by him called The Prophet of Innovation. And what he talks about is how technological advancements cause these waves of increasing innovation in business. And it causes companies to essentially reinvent themselves. It causes some companies to go away. For those that really can't innovate fast enough and embed new technological advances, they will falter. And one of the things he says is that these waves get more and more compressed over time. So you'll see to the right, there's a wave caused by software, new media, digital networks, and so on. And one could argue that that wave is even more compressed, and there's this wave or trend of sustainability that's really causing all sorts of innovation across all industry sectors. And some really interesting developments coming out of that. The gentleman to the upper right is Stu Hart out of Cornell, and he was really one of the first sustainability thinkers to really connect some of Schumpeter's work to sustainability and talked about how sustainability was a driver for innovation. He's got a number of papers that came out in the late 90s that are really worth reading and taking a look at, because it'll give you some good grounding in terms of why sustainability is driving innovation and that this is part of just a longer trend with business. So creative destruction in the big companies, there are numerous examples. I picked two. Monsanto, for decades, was known as a chemical company. And they basically transformed themselves into a biotech company. And, they've got seeds that are drought tolerant. They run print ads talking about how can we squeeze more water for our crops. Very clever re-engineering of the organization, positioned well in a very changing landscape globally. DuPont, again, a large chemical company, really moving aggressively into bioplastics and setting goals around green products going forward. So two interesting examples. I think they're both doing a pretty good job in terms of transforming what they do and how they fit into the know how much that's really driving the carbon market. At this point, I think the Carbon Disclosure Project is the big push in all of this. It's, again, voluntary in quotes. It's roughly 355 investors with several tens of trillions of dollars of assets that are being managed. And basically what they do on an annual basis is send out a voluntary questionnaire to businesses asking them to report on the carbon risk and opportunities to their business. We just see really steady progress with our client base in terms of responses, sophistication of these responses, and companies are really paying attention to this. They want to know how they can score better, how they can aggressively set some goals that they can meet, if not exceed. So the voluntary market's alive and well, and really driving, I think, most businesses to take a look at their carbon footprint and come up with ways to reduce that. A little bit more detail in terms of what this past year's report looked like. Again, I encourage you to download this. They've got an executive summary that's a pretty quick read. 74% of the companies polled have targets in place. 56 disclose those targets. You have the option of not disclosing. Interesting, European, North American companies, about equal in terms of the number of companies that responded. Historically, European companies have been ahead of U.S. multinationals. I think it's a level playing field now, as U.S. companies really do understand the business value from sustainability and are not just measuring their carbon footprint, but really reporting on it. A couple of the highest scoring companies, BASF, the world's largest global chemical company, scored extremely well in the carbon intensive industry sector. Non-carbon intensive, EMC, which is a data storage company. So this is something worth paying attention to, and a real business driver. The new oil. I'll touch on it a little bit, not to belabor the point, but I think we need to be mindful that water is not like oil, it's not like carbon. There's some similarities in terms of how it's developed. Lots of consumers wars fought over it, so it's obviously an important commodity. But it's really fundamentally different. There's the hydrologic cycles. You don't really use water, you just simply borrow it, move it around a lot. Water discharge is as important as extraction issues in terms of quality. Key point, local issues are very, very important. Carbon, is a global issue. A ton of carbon in China is the same as it is here. But that doesn't hold true for water. Local issues really dominate thinking in terms of how to approach the issue and some of the actions associated with that. And then there's the human right to water. I don't think there's a human right to oil, but there certainly is the notion that everyone's entitled to access to clean, affordable water. So why is water critical for business? Sort of diving into it, there's going to be water shortages going forward. Much of this exacerbated by climate change. But the key issues, it's license to operate. Companies coming into a community and starting to tap into water and precluding the community from access to water is a big issue. There's things such as risk management, production interruptions, cost to production, and supply chain interruptions. In the food and beverage sector, that's terribly critical. Great report released several months ago by Ceres and the Pacific Institute, both leaders on sustainability issues. Pacific Institute focuses on water, and they really highlighted what the key issues were for businesses and really quantified this in a pretty big way. Again, a report worth taking a quick look at, and so on. Waste is a very visible issue, has huge social implications throughout the world, so difficult to understand what carbon looks like or energy efficiency, but waste everyone seems to get. Waste is a big financial opportunity. We'll talk a little bit later about Walmart, but taking waste out of your supply chain is a big deal. You can generate some pretty significant savings if you really take a hard look at reducing your waste and operate more efficiently as an organization. Can waste be that costly? Yeah. If waste is 35% of your operation, think about how that cascades into all aspects of your footprint and profile. It impacts raw material costs, warehouse costs, labor, production, real estate, factory size. You take waste out, you can downsize. So really thinking about how waste impacts your overall business can have a